Hello and welcome back to the Clock End Taproom. This week we're kicking off a brand new series. We're looking back at the last 20 years of the Arsenal, from leaving Highbury to where we are today. We're going to revisit the moments, the players, the decisions and the turning points that shape the modern Arsenal. We're not trying to make a documentary or anything like that. We're just going to sit down, the three of us, look back at the stories that defined each era, ask what really happened, what we got right, what we got wrong, and what we'd think differently now with the benefit of hindsight. So where else can we start but the move from Highbury to the Emirates? For a lot of fans, it's remembered as the beginning of the trophy drought, selling our best players every summer, watching Chelsea, Man United, Man City spend money we simply couldn't compete with. It was frustrating, and at times it felt like we'd accepted that fourth place was as good as it was going to get. But is that actually a fair reflection of what happened? Did Arsenal sacrifice trophies to secure the club's future? Was Arsene Wenger performing one of the greatest managerial jobs English football has ever seen? Or did the club make too many excuses for poor recruitment, poor decisions, and a lack of ambition? Today, we're covering everything from the move to the Emirates in 2006 to nearly a decade later when Arsenal had a chance to finally end the trophyless run. We'll talk about the player exodus, the atmosphere at the stadium, the financial reality behind fourth place of the trophy, the nearly moments that could have changed everything, and whether this period was one of quiet success or accepted mediocrity. And at the end of each episode, we're going to pick a player that best defines that era of Arsenal. So grab a drink, settle in, and let's head back to the beginning of modern Arsenal. When Arsenal walked out at the Emirates for the first time in August 2006, it felt like the future. We had a world-class stadium, a world-class manager. We were one of Europe's biggest clubs, 2 years removed from winning the title, just a few months after going to the Champions League final. But what nobody realised at the time was that Arsenal had just entered an 8-year experiment. Could a club remain among Europe's elite whilst having no cash to spend? Could Arsene Wenger work his magic and keep the team competing while trying to balance the books to pay for this shiny new stadium? Let's get into it. Fies, obviously, one of the big things that time was, about fourth place being a trophy. I think you've got some strong opinions on that, haven't you? Was it a trophy? Do you think that was fair, or do you think it was all a bit much?
I think it became fair, didn't it? I think we made it fair. We kind of took a collective view that we were overperforming against this balance sheet we never saw, and we were competing in a marketplace that didn't sort of reflect our values. We were winning in the marketplace of ideas, apparently, but not on the football pitch. And I don't know, man. You guys know my views well on it. Something important you said in the intro there. How I feel now is with the benefit of hindsight. And at the time, I was with everyone. Like, we were carrying the flame, weren't we? We were saying, "Oh, look, you guys haven't done it right." And I suppose there is you've got to have some fairness attached to what I'm going to say eventually, insofar as that Arsene Wenger didn't anticipate Chelsea becoming this money laundering machine for Vladimir Putin, and then Man City becoming a bit harsh, was it? Oh, okay.
No, all good.
And City being bought by a country trying to clear its own image, but then that was sort of part of other clubs that were happening in Europe as well, right? So I don't suppose you can preempt that. I suppose what I really take issue with is the kind of internal Arsenal narrative that we had, which was we're not spending money because of the stadium move. And I never seen another club, or have yet to see another club, go through a stadium move and be that hamstrung for that long. And I just refuse to accept it. I know 20 years older than that now, mate. So maybe you know a little bit more about the world, and you look back at stuff and you go, well, no, I'm not sure I buy that anymore. Maybe I'm just bitter, mate, and getting grey and old now. But I just don't get. I suppose the crux of the argument that I'm going to make here is that when you decide to build something and you decide to go down this route, what part of it is ideological and what part of it is actually commercial? Do you know what I mean? So what I'm saying here is, and what we're trying to argue here is that was this, what part of this was ideological? Did we want to become this, sort of carrier of the moral argument everywhere, that we grew our club properly and this and that? Because for all intents and purposes, we're now privately owned. We're not on the stock exchange anymore, and we could be saddled with debt. We wouldn't know. So, and if we'd been bought by, I think it was Usmanov or something at the time, David Dean was trying to organize a sale to Usmanov, would we have just gone down the road of being another sort of club that was saddled with debt? Well, how's it affected the other clubs? Hasn't really. So this kind of thing, that there was this fear mongering that we didn't want to sell out to these billionaires. Well, we're owned by a billionaire now. We wanted to be self-sufficient. Great, we paid all this debt off. Okay, I'm going to just take the word for it that we paid all the debt off, and we're spending money now. I just don't buy it, mate. I don't buy the whole. We couldn't buy players. There were players that were going for within our budget that we could spend at the time. And if we're talking about someone like, let's say, take an example, Robin van Persie. Robin van Persie went for, I think it was like just shy of 40 odd million to Manchester United. It only cost us 4. So where did the balancing go? And I understand it's a bit, people will say, look, that's an individual case, and we're talking about more general things here. But no, I just don't buy it. I don't buy it anymore. I don't think we were as financially hamstrung as we kind of claimed that we were at the time. Personally, and being a bit more experienced in the commercial world now, I just think we were trying to get through a stage where there was turmoil in the boardroom. There was people, different factions trying to take over and get more authority. Perhaps shares were being transferred here and there. People trying to get good value for their shares. So why not increase? How do you do that? You increase the coffers of your company, right? More money comes in. You own something a bit more, there were all these kind of stories and stuff like the one that really pisses me off is the bank told Wenger to stay. Like, who the fuck does that? Who the fuck does that? Like, that's one of the most ridiculous things. And I've heard Arsene Wenger say it, that the bank wouldn't lend the money unless he stayed. It's just the most ridiculous thing in the world, mate. Yes, honestly. And it's just, and that kind of just makes me think that where was that balance? Were we ideologically aligned to being this club that was grown organically? Or were we actually doing something which benefited us? Now, people are going to point to the fact that we've spent money since then on, we bought Ozil, Sanchez, and we started spending money, and Aubameyang, Lacazette, these were expensive signings for us, and so on and so forth. But we ultimately got bought by a billionaire. So what did we actually go through then? Paying off the stadium? I just there are too many things which don't make sense in that, and I'm afraid it just takes away from the whole kind of, let's go get last day. What was it? We used to do like deadline day bargain dash. Like, let's go get this centre back for nothing. Let's get this guy for 5 million. Whereas, Chelsea and United and everyone else were signing players for like 50, 60, 70 million. And we were out trying to get Sebastian Scalacci on a free and whatever. And it took the piss, man. It took the piss for ages. And like, when we won the league this year, I sort of look back and go, 20 odd years, 20 odd years, 20 odd years, you'd pay off a mortgage. So what did we achieve at the end? And I personally think, just to sort of surmise where I am with it, I think this was a whole kind of corporate play for people to get as much as they could for their shares. And they eventually sold up, whether it was going to be to the Cronkies or anybody else. It was just, yep, let's get this done. Shares worth £10 today, be worth 20 quid tomorrow. We'll sell up. And I just think that if you accept what I'm saying, you kind of look at Arsene Wenger in a different way in that respect. Did it become about him and what he wanted, which was to be a good manager, because he's always going to be that, a great manager, in fact. But did we become part of his dream, and which inherently just became a nightmare for that little middle period? Because make no mistake, lads, we love our club, right? We love our club dearly, and I love Arsene Wenger, but we were diabolical, and the fall from the fall from where we were as champions of England, top 3 clubs in the UK at least, to where we got to, all on Arsene Wenger's watch, all on this board that didn't spend money. We've been very well behaved. If you were Spanish or French, we would have kicked off. I said, "This is bollocks." So I don't know, man. I think it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. We kind of just held this moral torch to everything and said, "Oh, we're great. Look, we play football the right way. We do this the right way." And where did that get us? 20-year drought. So I don't know, lads. For me, there's a lot of unanswered questions about that period, and I'm going to go with what makes sense to me through my understanding of the world. And I think personally that we sacrificed, if I'm going to put it bluntly, we sacrificed on pitch for off pitch, and that was a lot to ask from us, mate. There was a lot to ask. We can go through the players and stuff individually, but I just don't think it even comes down to transfers. I think it's bigger than that. Investments we made elsewhere, like we were letting talents that we knew were good go to rivals. What enforces that decision, lads? What that's a purely football decision. Like, what's going to make us? What's going to make you sell to Man United? Nothing. No one's ever going to explain to me why we did that to ourselves by selling to Man United. Did we need the money that badly? What happens if Robin van Persie fired us into winning the league himself that year instead of him going to Man United and let him go on a free? Could we really say no to 40 million quid? Probably. So I think personally we went through a huge sacrifice because people wanted to make money. I wonder if any of the board or indeed Arsene Wenger took a pay cut during that period, or did they get renewed at bigger numbers? Because we took a loss, didn't we?
Definitely did.
So yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, a bit of a rant, lads, but yeah,
I enjoyed it. So it's good to listen to. Nath, obviously we announced the Emirates Stadium, I think in 2002. I should have this written down here for this, but I think it was then that it was announced. You know, a year or two later, Abramovich come in. Not long after that, you know, you had to take over at City. Do you think the timing was just bad luck, or do you think there's something else to it with this? Do you think, you know, if Abramovich didn't exist, would the stadium move have worked better? Do you think?
I think you've got to look at. That's horrible saying this, but you've got to look at the team who were at the top at the time, and that was Manchester United. And I'm not just talking about success on the pitch. Off the pitch, they were this juggernaut. You know, commercial deals left, right, and centre. You know, huge stadium, huge global following, and yeah, all right, we had an invincible season, and you know we'd won. You know, we went toe to toe with them a little bit, but we were miles behind off the pitch. It was 9. You know, we were overperforming. Probably, I think everybody was. Anyone that could lay a glove on United was overperforming off the pitch. So I think at the time when it got announced, it made sense. We looked at it and gone, right, how can we close that gap? How can we get a bit closer? And, you know, the answer was a bigger stadium, you know, bigger stadium, newer stadium. It'll attract interest. Will look like, for want of a better expression, will look like a sexy option because we've got this brand new shiny toy that's going to be amazing. It's going to be futuristic. We're the first ones doing this. We were one of the first to say we're going to break the mold and we're going to go into this new era of, you know, big stadium, big money kind of thing. It kind of felt like we were one of the forerunners to do that. And then I think, like you said there, I think there is a big element of unluckiness in terms of Abramovich coming in at Chelsea. But then, you know, could you throw a spanner in that and say he's looked at what was going to happen and gambled on it? He's seen that Arsenal have triggered this sort of reaction of, right, we need to step up to become more attractive, to generate more money. The Premier League were doing the same thing with all the big TV deals that were going on. You know, the money was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's why Arsenal, let's be fair, that's why we jumped. We went, look, the money's there. It's only going to get more and more. So let's do it. you know, let's do it. I think what Fi says is spot on as well. People were looking at it and gambling and going, we can make a big chunk out of this. We can get this stadium and then sell up and go and make our money and get out, kind of thing. But did we trigger Abramovich coming in for Chelsea? That sounds really big-headed. That sounds like, oh, it was Arsenal, you know, who started this. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, did he see the opportunity? Did he see the TV money? Did he see the big crowds, you know, and all that kind of stuff? That sort of turn of like the Premier League was on the up. We started to chain with like, right, we can see this coming. We're going to get a new stadium to try and keep up with Manchester United. And then out of nowhere, Roman's gone, there's something happening over there and I need to put my money in it. I need to be involved. And all of a sudden Chelsea come along, you know, and absolutely take what was happening to a completely new level. That it was wide open then, weren't it? It was like, right, if there's any success in this, Abramovich is going to be that person who put his flag in the ground first for everybody else to follow. So all these billionaires that you've got now, it kind of feels like Abramovich was the first one, certainly in the Premier League, to show that market off and show that it could be done and be successful. You know, let's not. Yeah, all right, they might have bought all the players in the world, but it worked. It was successful. We just had a conversation about us not doing that and how unsuccessful we were. People are going to go look at those two models and go, right, okay, well, if I can put billions into it, then I'm going to do that because that's obviously where the success is. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it was unlucky, but going back to pre-Abramovich, it was the right decision. It was the right way to do it. I think other teams would have done it eventually and caught up. As much as we love Highbury, and we always will, it was a special place. And I might be speaking out of turn here, but I think away fans had a certain appreciation for Highbury as well. They understood the closeness of it and what sort of extra element it brought. But it wasn't at a level where we could carry on competing off the pitch. So I think it was the right decision. But yeah, timing wise, maybe it triggered some other events that we just didn't see coming.
I mean, Vice, do you think we had to move? Like, if we were still at Highbury today, where do you think we would be as a club? Just a quick hypothetical on that.
That's a good one, Dave. I mean, we had to move, so that's fair. I think whether you believe in the ideology part, or whether you believe in the commercial part, or whether you believe that we had to go or didn't have to go, I think eventually this had to happen, right? And it has. It's not. Most things aren't in a binary way, but I understand the question. If we had stayed at Highbury, we would have suffered. Definitely would have suffered. But I suppose really it depends if you're talking about the size of club and where we wanted to go in terms of grandeur and stuff or what it was like on the pitch. Because that team that played at Highbury is still talked about now, football wise.
Yeah.
The whole of France practically loving us as youngsters. It's all down to that team at Highbury. So 38,000 or 60,000, it just didn't make a difference, I don't think, in that way. Commercially, yes. We have to kind of put that to one side and say, okay, look, we wouldn't be able to compete. I don't think we wouldn't have been able to be the club that we are today if we didn't have that kind of stadium. It's kind of a prerequisite now to have that size of stadium, that size of I suppose daily revenue that you get from match days and whatever. So I think it was necessary. Could we have done it in stages? I don't think so. I think it had to happen there and then. You're not going to find land in London that easily. Yeah. So it kind of had to happen. If you've got it, do it. But from a purely football perspective, I don't think it had to happen. But I appreciate. I think Nathan brings up some really good points there, and I suppose it goes back to what Nathan was saying. If we had got an oligarch in, if someone decided they'd like to money launder through Arsenal Football Club, and pleased us as a byproduct, Chelsea haven't built a bigger stadium. Their stadium currently is about the same size as Highbury. So there's your answer. If you've got a wealthy benefactor who doesn't care, get all the trophies in, then we'll talk. because Chelsea could go now, and now they haven't won fuck all in ages, but Chelsea could go now and not win anything for a while. 2 Champions Leagues, multiple league titles. What does it matter? And it just, for me, it just goes back to the same point about we're ideologically different to Chelsea. Right? We have different views on football. We have different views on winning, but and the way we win. And I think that was infused at that time. I would have liked to have. No, I've got to be honest here. I liked when we were moving. I liked it. I liked the fact that we were doing it in what would have been a proper way. Build a bigger stadium, get more people in, and I'm glad we did it that way. In short, I just don't think we needed to give up so much, and that proved it. And I think, again, going back to what Nathan said, if we'd have waited a year, I'll put a hypothetical back on you guys. What do you think would have happened if we'd done nothing? Stayed at Highbury, maybe acquired the land at Ashburton Grove or whatever, and just hung on with planning permission, and just said, "Okay, well, we'll wait for a wealthy benefactor." Could have been Osmanov, could have been whoever, right? Could have been Man City owners who'd have come in and said, "Bloody hell, they've got planning permission there. All I've got to do is throw a couple of quid at that, and then that club goes through the roof." And I mean, so that could have happened, if we're gonna go down the hypothetical routes. And that journey would have been just nothing for somebody whose net worth is that of a small-sized country. So, but they're all ifs and buts. I'm glad we've done it. I'm glad it's out of the way. But I don't know, lads. It's been 20 years now, and the Emirates looks kind of old compared to other stadiums.
Yeah.
They're talking about increasing it and doing this and that. So, what did it get? Okay, you increased match day revenue. Great. I think match day revenue now is dwarfed by like global sales, isn't it?
It's a nice bonus thing now, the match day revenue, isn't it, compared to
I think
TV
it's about
rights
3 million.
and all those things.
Yeah, it's about 2.5-3 million quid a game. If you think about
Which is nice,
how much,
but it's not like nothing major, is it?
well, we're going to go and buy. Let's say we're going to go and buy Morgan Rogers. Forget Morgan Rogers anyway. We spent £100 million on Declan Rice. How many match day revenues is that? I mean, it's very. I'm being silly here, but in terms of the numbers and stuff. But I'm just saying, like, that's how small it is.
Yeah.
You could buy Declan Rice and make the money back on shirt sales, if you wanted to. Globally, if we did a tour of China with a global tour with Declan Rice at the front, how many shirts would we still have Declan Rice? My point is, like, there's no one way to skin a cat, and I just don't see. I just don't. I never, at the time, I was really glad it was happening. I just don't see it as a binary thing anymore. I just think there were other ways to do it. And again, I think, as the more and more we dive into this, I think some of it starts when a lot of things stop making sense to you, once you remove the ideology from it. I think, where'd you go with that then? What could be the reason behind it, apart from, making the coffers look good? So just to answer your question, Dave, had we have not moved, I think this would have happened anyway. I don't know. What do you think?
My instincts are that, assuming we didn't end up with a rich owner, if all things sort of stayed basically as they were now, I think we'd have probably had more success in that early part. But maybe right now we'd be on the slide. We'd maybe struggle to keep up, but it's very difficult to know, isn't it? So that's assuming no one comes in. But I think, as you said, there's every chance that if we hadn't moved, that we'd have been a very attractive club to a rich owner wanted to come in. Everyone wants to buy us now anyway, but I wonder how much the Emirates makes a difference to that. Or did want to buy us, didn't they? So the bloke who owned Spotify was saying a few years ago, wasn't it? And a few other people around. It's really hard to know. But yeah, if all said equal, I think if we just stayed at Highbury and nothing else much should change, then I think we probably have more titles than we have right now. But right now we'd maybe we might be falling away and not be quite where we would hope we would be.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Well, before we move on to the very depressing subject of the player exodus, make sure if you are watching to subscribe to us, follow us everywhere because we're going to be 5 or 6 parts in this series. So make sure you're subscribed to get all the latest from these. Follow us everywhere. We've got lots of good stuff going up. A lot of it's taken off like Scottish fans or Villa fans or whoever it might be. Just lots of nice clips. So yeah, make sure you're following all those places so you can get involved in that conversation. But yeah, let's move on to the real fun subjects. The player exodus. If you ever wonder why Arsenal fans have trust issues, this is probably where it started. Every summer felt the same. You convinced yourself this was the year we'd kick on, and then suddenly somebody left. It started with Vieira, then Omri, Adebayor, Toure, Clichy, Nasri, Fàbregas, Van Persie. Every time Arsenal found a superstar, eventually someone richer came knocking. We didn't just lose players. We lost belief, I think, in the end. Let's get into this. Let's get depressed for a while, shall we? Nath, which departure hurt you the most, do you think?
Probably Fàbregas. Fàbregas for me. I got it. I understood it. But just for this era, we're probably going to get onto this later on, but for this era, he was like, for me, the face of it. Like, he was the new hope, right? He was like the poster boy. He was going to take us on to this new period with all the trophies and everything and what have you. I was just gutted because he was such a good player. He was our beacon of hope, really. And when he went, it was like, right, okay, well, what are we going to do to replace him? How do we replace him? It kind of felt like all the others were going to go as well. It kind of set the tone. I know he divides opinion a little bit in the fan base because of how he went and where he ended up and things like that. But just at the time, he'd not made a secret of where he would like to go eventually. He never shied away from that. But yeah, that was the one. That was the one that really sort of you can't really count Omri because it kind of felt like his time had come. Yeah. As much as I wanted him to retire at Arsenal, I just it was never going to happen, was it? Do you know what I mean? So yeah, for me, it's Fàbregas all day long.
What about you, Fires? Same for you, or you got a different one?
I'll make Nathan right. Fàbregas was the face of Arsenal because he played at Highbury, didn't he? And then, but just for the sake of conversation today, lads, I felt equally as bad about Van Persie, to be honest. Barcelona at least are abroad. A little chance of playing them the way we were playing anyway. But we just Robin Van Persie, because he was also just one of the other players that played at Highbury a little bit, and we'd invested time and resources in him when he was broken. He was broken, couldn't get his body together.
Yeah,
and then on top of all that, what emerged was just a phenomenal striker. No one could have. Fàbregas was amazing from day one. He felt like, even when he went back and he went to Chelsea and whatever, Fàbregas been playing like that since he was like 15. He was just that good. Van Persie, I feel like we banked on him, we just put all our hopes into him, resources, effort, patience, and it paid off. He just became this world-class striker, and we had him for 2 seasons, and we done nothing. And I'm sorry, lads. Yeah, we are going to get depressed now. I hate him for where he went to. I blame Wenger for that as well. Didn't need to send him to Manchester United. Anyone would have taken him. Anyone in the world would have taken him. We might have received a payment plan from an Italian club for the next 30 years for him, but we still would have got around 40 million quid for him. Didn't need to sell him to Manchester United. 1. 2. I mean, imagine it now. Go on, Bukayo Saka. Man United turn up and say, we need a right winger. How much short for Saka? And we say, we'll take 100 million for him. Done. How would you feel? You'd be fuming. So I was fuming when he went. And it just showed that if we had someone good, then we weren't good enough. We weren't big enough to keep him. And that one hurt bad. And then there was a whole, he won the league, and then he practically won them the league. And he was given to them. Yeah, and we gave it. Instead of us saying, we've got probably one of the best strikers in Europe, let's back the team now. Because I think at that point we were like 4 years into the Emirates Stadium. Back him, give him someone, buy a centre back, buy a goalie who wasn't shit. But no, we said, yeah, Man United, you have him, you go win the league. Because Man United didn't have a hope in hell of winning the league, and we gave them him. Because City were cleaning up at that point, weren't they? They were troubling everyone, Chelsea too. And we gave them, and for me, it just didn't make sense. But it was more the everything with the transfer. Fàbregas, I agree, was a phenomenal player, and he could have kept it to himself that he always wanted to go to Barcelona. Didn't need to tell everyone all the time in every press conference how much he loved Barcelona and how much he missed La Masia. They also did fuck him off when he was a kid, so there was that. But Van Persie was the one, mate, because we were going through a tough time, not terrible, but a tough time, and we suddenly got like, wow, look, we've just got an amazing player again. What can we do with him? Tell you what we'll do. Now that he's good and not injured anymore, let's cash in. Back to Man United.
I think I'm with you on it. I think he's he was the one for me. I think this was the real sign that we'd almost, I don't know, given up was the right way of putting it.
I think you're right, Dave.
This was the one that really signalled that, we're just settling. We're happy with, getting fourth and Champions League. I don't know. Fàbregas, I think we all knew that eventually he would go back at some point, where Van Persie, I know we had signed him, but he still felt like our own. I don't know why. We had signed him, but he still felt like he'd always come through with us. As you say, where he was broken and we built him back up, and he took over from Henry when Henry left. He really felt like I don't know. He was the one that really signalled to me that this was
we given up.
This was over. Yeah, it was. Yeah, and I think that affected everything. I think the whole mentality of the club changed at that point. I think fans, I think the players, I think everyone, you could just see we were different. I think after that Van Persie's out, I think we were a different club for a number of years.
I still can't believe it. I still can't believe we sanctioned that. I still can't believe we sanctioned it. It just beggars belief. Beggars belief.
Yeah.
And I think... just see the point I'm making about being ideological at that point. Like,
definitely.
People are going to say, oh, we had to sell him. No, we didn't. Who said we had to sell him? We didn't. I think Robin Van Persie's given interviews since then where he said that he had multiple conversations with the club. So what do you want to do? And I don't buy into everything he says because, I don't like him. But it does fit in with if you follow that, sort of that logic of what I was saying earlier and now, it does. Arsene Wenger can sell you a dream and the club can sell you a dream and get you to sign a new contract. Ultimately, they're going to get you to go at some point because they're going to cash in on you because they've cashed in on every single other one. And so, that was the one that hurt me the most as well, man. I've got to agree with you, Dave. Fàbregas was an amazing player. And I think what's forgotten about Fàbregas is we had an option to buy him back. Didn't take it.
That one hurt me. That one really hurt when he went to Chelsea.
That just made me angry. We had the option to go, and okay, he might be talking rubbish. Again, someone I don't like, but but we had the option to buy him back. Didn't do it. Like, why?
And he would have been perfect for us at that time, I think, as well. I think we had that hole for Fàbregas there. I mean, I think we could always find a hole for Fàbregas in fairness, but
even if you were an accountant type of economist type of manager, you would have got him back at a decent price because we would have then reversed the situation that Nathan was mentioning and that you did, that he only wanted one club. Well, if you've got a clause with a club which says you get first refusal, in that case, I'm going to negotiate a hard bargain now because now you're stuck in a one club market now. You've got to sell him back to me. So I would have just bought him on the fact that I could sell him in 2 years for profit. It just made no sense to me whatsoever. Oh, we're going to block the We're gonna. What was it? The reason at the time we're gonna block the development of who we've got at the club. What? Denilson. Like, you know, what Jack Wilshere couldn't play with Cesc Fàbregas. I mean,
that's a terrifying thought process, that, isn't it?
Do you know what I mean? Like, we're going to block all these things. Like, come on, lads. Okay, cool. You're going to block it, so you're not going to sign him. Tell me who else you signed that year. Nobody I can remember. Can you remember who we signed that year instead of Fàbregas?
I really can't.
Fuck knows. And that's what I'm saying, mate. It's, you know, these things are just illogical, mate. When you put them all together, like literally, you know, one of those things that jigsaw puzzle when they're all things up in the air, you're like, God, that looks really difficult. And you start putting them down, you're like, oh, hold on a minute. It doesn't fit how I thought it does, but actually this way it does fit. And if you start thinking about the fact that maybe we were like just driven, like, do you know, was it Wenger said once? He said, well, and I like Wenger as well, but it just sounds like an anti-Wenger program. But what was he said once? You know, if you play a young player, he's going to cost you points a year. He said that, right? If you play young players, they're going to go. So he's aware of it. He's aware of what's going to happen. But still, you know. Yeah.
Well,
so anyway,
let's go on to equally, happy time. I mean, there's not a lot of happy discussion in this in this episode, so. No, if you want some happy stuff, skip to maybe the next episode because we've got some more bad stuff coming up. I mean, we've got what I think we'd probably call the nearly team. I mean, the Arsenal team that, if just one moment goes slightly differently, then maybe we're talking about, multiple league titles. Maybe Van Persie doesn't leave. Maybe some of the other players don't leave. In February 2008, Arsenal were 5 points clear at the top of the Premier League and seemingly on course to win their first title since 2004. But that season now is remembered for one thing, and that is Eduardo getting his leg broken in a match with Birmingham. But it felt like more than just that injury. The club just collapsed, and it was a disastrous end to the season. But and it's haunted the club ever since. And suddenly one of the most talented squads Wenger built potentially just becomes remembered as what it didn't achieve. Nath, do you think that Eduardo injury really cost us the league that year?
It's easy to point to that, isn't it? It's very easy to go, that one moment derailed it. Look, one moment doesn't define a season, good or bad. We know that. We've lived through that. I think at the time, going into what Fives was saying, there was a lot of things going on that didn't really make a lot of sense. And any success that we were having always felt a little bit fragile. I don't know what you two think about that, but it always felt like,
yeah, that's a good point.
It's only going to take something small for this to go. I mean, maybe that's just the Arsenal fan in us. Bloody hell! All last season, I was saying, everyone was asking me like, "Oh, you're going to win the league?" And I was like, "No, we're not. We're definitely not." And they're like, "Mate, you're 12 points clear." I'm like, "Nope. I've seen this story before. We are not winning this league title." I was convinced. I was convinced, and that's because of these episodes that we're doing right now. This is where that all started for me. Was this is where all that negativity began as a fan. And all the knowledge that we're not going to see it through, because we never did. You can say for this particular season, was it Eduardo? But are we going to go through every season and say, was it this, was it that, was it the other? Because and then when it's not just one season, when it's 2 and 3 and 4, you go, right, okay, it's not one moment that's defining this. There is a fundamental issue within this club. And I think you're absolutely spot on with what you said, Dave. That has haunted us and dogged us even into last season. Even the two seasons before last season where we finished second. I think we all agree that we were playing better football than we were, a season just gone. But there's always been that lack of belief, that lack of, winning mentality to get over the line and get it done, kind of thing. And I think you're right. I think this was the start of that. I really do. We just started to doubt ourselves. We'd moved to a new stadium, didn't feel comfortable in it, didn't look right in it. The board and the manager were making some mad decisions. Every time it looked like we were going to get our shit together, the next big player went out the door, and it just built this massive sort of like I don't know, this image, this mentality inside us, like yeah, we're doing all right. We're finishing where we should be for the off-field stuff, and we're happy with it. And this is just who we are now. And I think you said it before, Dave. We just accepted it a little bit. And yeah, it just wasn't. It wasn't great. Going back to the original question, no, I don't think it was just the Eduardo thing. I think it had an effect. And because to be fair, and I'm not just saying this because I'm an Arsenal fan, but it was a particularly horrible looking one, wasn't it? It wasn't just an average leg break, was it? It was one of them where you look at it and go, "Oh my god, it was gruesome." That's what it was. Not saying
that's the ones you remember, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not saying that there's levels of leg break. By the way, you break your leg, it's horrible, no matter what. But that one just looked particularly. I think one of Cisse's comes back. David Boston, people like. There's certain ones that come to mind straight away, and Eduardo's is one of them. So obviously that's going to be a difficult thing to get out of your mind, especially being on the pitch and stuff. But if you want to be champions, you've got to have that mentality of, that game's over and done with now. It's a horrible thing. I'm very sad that my teammates, potentially never going to be the same again. Certainly not the same player. But you've got to move on. You can't let that derail your season. So I think there was a lot of stuff going on that we've mentioned already, and that we will mention later on that fed into that as well. I don't think it was just that one moment. And I think it's, like I said at the beginning, it's easy just to pick one moment in a season and say, "Oh, that's where it all fucked up." I don't buy into that. One moment doesn't define it.
I mean, Fires in that time, I think also criticised a lot for maybe lacking leaders and that. Do you think the squad was just mentally weak?
I think the club were mentally weak, mate.
Yeah.
I think the club were mentally weak. I think we as fans, it transmitted to us, we became mentally weak. I shouted at the word bottle when Nathan was talking, and I agreed everything with what Nathan's saying. We lacked the bottle that we had when we were dominating teams. We let the whole over aggressiveness of other teams get into our head. Teams have been aggressive against bigger teams for as long as football has been played. Do you know what I mean? It's a great equalizer. If you're not as good as the team in front of you, you give it to them a little bit. That's quite normal. I think what was abnormal was the amount of leg breaks and stuff we were having. I completely sympathise with that. I was fuming. I still hate Stoke to this day because of it. I still hate Sunderland because of what they did to Abu Dhabi on that day from some fella who ended up working in a call centre not long after that. So, yeah, I know there was over physicality, but what does that mean? If we're talking about just that binary moment that you had, that you asked Nathan, for example, I think William Gallas was our captain then. So if you want to talk about mad decisions that the club did, there's one. So we sold we arguably got rid of the best left back in English history. We brought in a French basket case. We gave him the number 10 shirt to play at centre back. This is what I was saying earlier. When you start laying things out, you start thinking, Jesus Christ, who was making all these decisions? So you had Gallis. It was, if people forget about the Eduardo game, we drew 2-2, and there was plenty of points to play for afterwards. Gallis sat down in the middle of the pitch, decided he wasn't going to move and sulk and do a Ronaldo. And obviously the players are going to be shaken by it. But how many clubs does this happen to?
Yeah,
where it completely derails them, and I just think it comes from the top, mate. And that's not just Wenger. I think we spoke earlier. Does the squad lack? I don't think it lacked bottle or mental strength. I just think that if you're playing for a club where you've turned up, whereas in the eyes of the outsider and the fans and stuff, we still think we're champions in our heart because, we've seen our team win it before. But if you sign for a club thinking, I'm a good player, they've just signed me for decent money, I'm going to play well, Champions League, whatever, what have you not. If we win the league title, great. If we don't, we've challenged for it. I'll get a good move out of this because they're going to sell me. So even if you don't think that, your agent's telling you that. all through the season, your agent saying, "Guess what? City will have you at the end of the year." Oh, guess what? Barcelona want you end of the year. And at that point, you might even go into your shell and think, hold on a minute, I don't want my leg broken. I don't want to go anywhere. No, I'd like to move somewhere, or I don't want to put anything in jeopardy. Maybe an international tournament, and it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if, like Wenger was saying, he was getting approached by different clubs and stuff at the time. I just think that that idea of Arsenal not being the be all and end all for these players. And I think that's completely changed now, by the way. But at that time, people thinking of Arsenal as a stepping stone just filters through the club. Absolutely filters through the club. And you only need to let the media in a little bit, just a little crack, and the stories will go. The stories will start straight away. Oh, they don't like it up them. They don't this, they don't that. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Next thing you know, we're scared of going into tackles. We're throwing away leads at like Bolton and places like that where we used to, even if we scored early, we'd end up losing and stuff like that. We started doing some mad things, and I just think it wasn't just the players, because those players that we're saying are, apart from Gallas and people like that, an absolute basket case, but cliches. Eventually, we'll talk about Sanya and stuff like that. These people went on to win stuff. Fàbregas played in that team. He went on to win stuff. He's done all right. So yeah, but that was a pivotal moment, because it just opened up the club for us to see it bare for a second. I think not so much pivotal in a season. I agree with Nathan. There's so many things that happen, and I just think that every year we found a reason to fuck things up. And sometimes it was, people are kicking us, bollocks, we're not playing anymore. Or, you know what I mean? Like, no one's interested in playing football against us. Anti-football? Yeah, they're playing anti-football. Just go and smash them, mate. You're better than them at football. It's a problem. But I think, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And mental strength, I think you take that from the manager. If the manager's nervous, you're nervous. If the manager's angry, you're angry. If the manager's got you cool, calm, and collected, guess what?
Yeah, I think it just really exposed all those weaknesses, didn't it? That one incident, but yeah, there's plenty more to it, as you say.
I think to jump in for a quick second, Fi's made a point there about our players were not poached, but went on to other clubs and had success. I think that feeds into what we were saying before, where Fi's were saying, did we have to sell these players because we bought a new stadium and all that kind of stuff? We were doing something right because everybody was coming to us to take those players away from us. We were onto something on the pitch, but we didn't have the backing from upstairs to just be a little, throw caution to the wind from a money point of view and go, do you know what? Let's just rough it out. Let's just see if we can win something on the back of, not selling players. Let's just keep them together and just see if we can actually ride it, And even if it was just one Premier League title in that era, it changes the conversation, doesn't it?
100%.
But I just, when you were speaking then and you said that, it was like a light bulb moment in my head. I just thought, oh my God, he's right. These teams, your Cities, your Chelseas, your Barcelonas, were coming to our team and taking our players because we were obviously doing something right. We just weren't getting the full 100% part of it right. So yeah, I just thought I'd jump in and just, because that was like a light bulb for me just then.
I think what you're saying is right, because, look at the current squad. If we hadn't won the league this year, every player in that squad would be labelled as, like historic bottler. Every single one of them would be the biggest bottlers. Now they're champions and they'll always be champions. And, now we're going to a World Cup and, England have got a chance of winning. We're like looking at players like Rice and Saka as winners now, a reason why England can go on and win the World Cup, because they've got that mentality. Where if they've thrown that league away, everyone thinks they're bottlers.
Yeah.
And, they're still the same player. They're still the same person. But, it's stupid how these little moments can change that thing. Those little things, can't they? All right. Well,
but look, just, if I could, lads, for a second,
go.
Just to kind of build on that a little bit. What's the inverse of that then? We don't sell the players. Okay, cool. we have a better season, they're worth more money. I think that's normal. We can anticipate that's a natural result. We might win something, we might not. No one's got a divine right for winning anything. But those players are tied down to bigger contracts. We are able to then sell them to whoever we want. We're able to then invest that money into other players. My point is that if you have a business and you're saying, I am going to invest in these assets and these assets need to pay me back, great. Why wouldn't you then allow those, build around those assets, or at least continue some kind of conveyor belt which allowed you to then acquire and then sell on? What for me was I think it really just does go back to the Van Persie incident. The Van Persie sale is like, you cannot help but think that selling our best players, just when something doesn't make sense, you've got to always go back and think, well, what could have been the reason there? Something like the whole Sherlock Holmes thing, right? Whatever's left over is the reason why. And the only things that are, because it doesn't make financial sense to sell him, because purely on the fact that if we give one player to Man United won the league, we haven't, so we've lost money. Chelsea, whatever, Ashley Cole, Ashley Cole was like a brilliant footballer, right? And what did we not do? Like, did we really want William Gallas? I don't think that was. It's just that when he agreed terms with Chelsea, we decided to give us William Gallas. Then great. Like Ashley Cole, we could have sold him to abroad and made that money. Just you see what I mean, lads? Like there's some really, really bad decision making, and that's not the board, lads. That's not the coaches. That comes down to one person. And like as much as I adore him for like the football he played and everything, there's some really mad decisions that have been made, really bad ones for our club. And at some point, we've got to, if you make a list of all these decisions, you'll be like, well, fuck me, man. Like, these are really, really bad fucking decisions we've made. And, like going down to like individual, and you made this point, Dave, going down to the individual events that took place. Those events, I don't think were seminal in terms of whether we won something or not. Although, yes, if Eduardo doesn't break his leg, yeah, we can kind of extrapolate that perhaps we would have gone on and won the league, but who knows? But what it did do, though, is when stuff like that happened, it really opened up the club, and you had a little peek into it, and you saw that everyone was a wreck. No one was pulling in the same direction. Do you see what I mean? We were like good time Charlies, weren't we? We enjoyed it while it was going well, and then when it got tough, all of a sudden, Fàbregas in an interview with Marca says, "Oh, I'd really like to go play for Barcelona again someday." Like, do you know what I mean? Like, maybe the journalists were sitting on these articles or whatever, just waiting for the moment. Next thing you know, God, we haven't even mentioned the goalkeepers, mate. I mean, for like a decade, we had the worst goalkeepers in the world. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, sorry, I had to just get that extra bit in. Like, it is the most frustrating time that I had as a fan, and just looking back, you think that it may have been worse than I actually thought, because I was out there fighting the whole thing. We had the what was that fella's name? Net spend. Like, we're winning the net spend league. Like, what the fuck does that mean? What does that matter? What does that matter? Like, that club would have been worth more. That, even if it was an investment, it would have been better for anybody. Just looking at it from like, I own shares in something, if they'd invested in the thing. So what was going on?
Yeah, I think that was what's frustrating, wasn't it? That, just say, the club would have been worth more. Everything about it would have been better if we had actually put money into the squad. But very, very frustrating time. I think one of the big questions around that time was, did just Arsenal just lose their identity? We moved from Highbury. Highbury wasn't just a stadium. It was Arsenal. The Emirates was bigger, better, more modern, but it didn't really feel like home, did it? The stadium lacked any sort of atmosphere, and it was a real problem early on. Highbury was a tough place for visiting teams to come and play. That small pitch, tight, packed in stadium, and the Emirates always felt like playing a neutral venue for them first, 10 years of being there. The club's lack of success didn't help, but there was just a disconnect for whatever reason. Quiet stadium, expensive tickets, and the famous Highbury atmosphere seemed to disappear almost overnight. Nath, do you think that it was down to the stadium, or do you think it was more just how the club was performing at the time? That we had a bad atmosphere. Fans were struggling, or I don't know how to put it, but it was. Do you think that was down to the stadium itself, or do you think that was more how we were performing on the pitch?
I think you've got to say the stadium, haven't you? Because performances on the pitch up to that point weren't horrendous. Like we mentioned, we were league champions just 2 seasons before, still competing, still playing a really nice brand of football. Maybe, whether we moved or not, let's just say we had planning permission and we were saving all the money and what have you, it still wouldn't have been great, even if we'd have stayed at Highbury. I think looking at it in the moment, you'd probably say it's on the stadium. And I think there's evidence as well outside of Arsenal that other clubs have struggled with that move as well. I think every team that's moved stadiums will say that they've struggled to recreate, because you can't recreate what you had. You can't bring it with you as much as you want to, as much as you think you can. It's different, isn't it? You're going from 30,000 to 60,000. How many of that 30,000 have been there forever, or have a brother or a dad or an uncle, or, there's that connection, isn't there? And that's not just a Highbury, that's Main Road. Obviously I'm a northerner. Main Road was a big one up here. It was very much a community club, a community stadium, that kind of deal. And then they really struggled. Probably you'd argue still struggle with the Etihad. So I think the evidence, not just from an Arsenal perspective, but from everyone else. You look at Tottenham. We don't like mentioning them, but they're struggling. They're struggling. We don't like them, but that stadium is fantastic. It's a brilliant stadium. Can't knock them for that. They're struggling with it. City struggled with it. West Ham were another one. I remember going to Upton Park and it was just terrifying walking around there. Do you know what I mean? Just the whole sort of vibe and how they built that for such a long time. And they go into this new shiny Olympic Stadium and just they're struggling as well. So yeah, for me, I think the easy answer is it was the stadium. Obviously, the performances that followed the move to the stadium didn't help, and everything that we've been talking about tonight, I don't think any of us expected it to be quite as dramatically bad as what it was. But yeah, for me, it's the stadium. It takes a long time to. It's like when you buy a new house, isn't it? You buy a house, but it's not home. It takes time to make it into a home, into your home. Exactly the same with stadium, just on a much bigger scale. So yeah, for me, I get what you're saying about the performances, and that probably does play a small part of it. But the main part of it is the stadium move and trying to like you said, we lost our identity. Trying to rediscover what Arsenal is now. What are we? We're not this 30,000 seater team who've got this amazing atmosphere. We've got this big new brand new shiny toy. We're trying to portray ourselves as big boys, but we're not quite there yet. We're not aligned all the way through. So yeah, it's got to be the stadium, hasn't it?
If I was to skip ahead a little bit in time here, even current day, though, I think there still struggles with that atmosphere, isn't there? You've got, I'm never going to support a group banging a drum the whole game because it does my head in. But the Ashburton Army have tried to make things better. Red Action do stuff, but I think you see last season, as soon as things go wrong, the fans are we're all getting antsy, aren't we? We're all struggling. How do you think the atmosphere's changed at the Emirates? Do you think it's still the same, or is it just about success on the pitch that really makes it better?
I think so, mate. I think we underestimate 20 years is a long time, man. And we're a big club. Things are, the can was definitely kicked down the road when we said we build this stadium, what we're going to do, and this and that. But we just never looked like we were going to challenge ever. We all knew that November or January going into February, we'd be out of every competition in that space of like 2 weeks. We knew that was coming. It became something we expected every year, and then we'd kind of finish about third or fourth and be like, yeah, all right. It really metastasized around about the time when we started finishing out of the top four. That's when you saw it at its worst. And I think a lot of our fan base was kind of in that period where people who were used to Highbury and then a little bit of the Emirates were kind of like stopped. They were stopping going. Other people were coming in, and so that kind of transfer of of fandom from one age group to another kind of happened at a time when we were like just a rudderless club, and that we're going through the longest transition ever. But yeah, I'll make you right. It's performances on the pitch, and identity of a club comes from what they see on the pitch. There weren't any academy talents that we were kind of could get behind. I mean, we'll get onto some that did come through, and that made us hopeful again. But then the same things would happen, and then that would put us back in the same situation. So no, I think it's club led, it's performance led, but also we just lost our identity, man. So what I'll make what both of you are saying are right. We kind of just both became this. Well, sorry, you both are right, and then we just became this club where we accepted what we were, and that was like the final straw. Like the board were going to do what they were going to do. Wenger was going to do what he wanted to do, and I'm sure he was under some kind of constraints, maybe mentally more than commercially. But that remains to be seen. I just think that it all kind of filtered down onto the pitch, and the pitch then it filtered onto the fans, and then the fans we were we were playing for stuff that didn't exist. Sorry, so we were like, oh yeah, but we're doing it properly. You lot might have won all the trophies, but we're somehow the moral arbiter of how clubs should be run properly. Going back to just mentioning what Nathan said about the clubs struggling once they build their stadium. Absolutely right. Clubs do struggle when they build their stadium, and we found a little bit of a problem pre-Emirates when we were playing some games at Wembley and stuff for the Champions League, and we struggled to replicate just for a day what we got at Highbury at Wembley. So yeah, there is going to be a time for that, where that kind of has to bed in. But then it's not a difficult fix, lads. Fans, we're not a difficult fix. Later on in this series, we're going to talk about like some of the players that did start to sign for us, and it didn't take much for us to just go off on one, and for people to descend on the Emirates Stadium like we're going to win it all again. Like, do you know what I mean? It doesn't take much. But we were just stuck in this rut, and I don't think there wasn't an easy way out of it. And unfortunately, the club took the easy route, which was they had different goals to what the club and the fans did, and they did and because they were custodians and they owned the club, they just did what they wanted, and it filtered down onto us. And in the end, we became happy with fourth. We made excuses for scraping fourth. Make no mistake, lads, just chart it. We were like winning leagues at Highbury. Then we got that. This is a gradual decline, but no one ever pulled it out and said, we're getting worse, lads. Like we're really getting worse. But then somehow it was, they're really quiet at their stadium. Well, I've been to the Emirates a few times, lads, and we're not quiet when we're playing well. I can assure you of that.
That's definitely true. Well, let's move on to some maybe happier stuff. I think things started to turn around. Maybe as a decade started. Sometimes the biggest songs don't make sense until years later. In 2011, Arsenal signed a German centre half nobody was particularly excited about. Alongside him came a Spanish midfielder from Everton. Neither transformed Arsenal overnight, but I think things did. The mentality did start to shift from that point onwards. But one ended up becoming a massive part of the youth system that's given us players like Saka, Nwaneri, Lewis Skelly, Max Dowman, and plenty of others. And the other become a manager, and we all know how that worked out. I mean, looking back, maybe this was when things started to shift back towards what we see now. I mean, Nath, when Arteta signed, what were your thoughts at the time? Were you pleased about that signing? No, he had a good reputation, didn't he, coming in?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, apologies, I'm having internet issues, so if I duck out, that's why. But yeah, how to describe the signing of Arteta? It wasn't underwhelming, but it didn't excite me. I think, like you said, he came with a good reputation. He came from we signed from Everton, didn't we?
Yeah. It was a few days after we had just got battered 8-2 as well, wasn't it? Which doesn't help the feeling around that time.
No, definitely not. But also, like, at the time, I don't think I could think of a better player in the Premier League off the top of my head to combat that type of performance. There's no way, as a manager, as a starter for 10, he accepts that performance. But even as a player, he'd be the first one in the dressing room going, "What the fuck was that?" He would, it just felt like we got a bit of that bite back, something that we'd not had since Patrick Vieira, in my opinion. We'd not had that nastiness, that bit of, not saying that Arteta was a nasty player, but he had that sort of, he'd throw a bit of a tackle in Monday and stuff like that. And I think we'd missed that for such a long time. I think we were sort like Fi said, and I think Dave, you touched on it as well. We were soft. And everybody knew it. Every single team knew that we were soft, and you knew how to play against Arsenal. First 10 minutes, throw a couple of big tackles in, hit some of the quality players. They're not going to do anything for the rest of the game, for the reasons that we said before. So when Arteta came in, he'd had this great partnership with Mikel. That Everton team at the time, by the way, I had a lot of love for that. There was a lot of good things going on in that team. Kind of a Barclays man, or whatever they say these days. Is it Barclays man, or whatever the saying is these days? That's one of them teams that comes to mind.
What the young people saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm not down with the kids. I never have been. But yeah, like I said, it wasn't underwhelming. He came with a good reputation, and I think what he brought to the team at the time was exactly what we needed. It wasn't a flashy signing. It was more of this guy's going to help us in the engine room. He's going to bring that bit of nastiness that we've not got. Maybe a bit of a better mentality as well. So yeah, not like jumping for joy, but I was like, okay, yeah, I like that. I can get on board with it.
Let's go for Mertesacker then. Do you think he was a bit underappreciated as an Arsenal player? This was a man who had, I think, over 100 caps for Germany. A proper
World Cup winner.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he's a proper pro, I think, wasn't he? Do you think fans don't remember him as well as maybe they should?
No, he was shit, mate. let's not lionize him. I love what he did for the academy, and he's by all means he's a good egg. He's a good lad. But he was shit, and Koscielny literally gave him a career at Arsenal. He had that one performance in the FA Cup final. I'm sure we'll get onto that. But apart from that, we got slapped 8-2. Also, in that period, everyone knew what Arsenal needed. Every man and his dog knew that Arsenal needed a decent midfielder, a decent centre back, and a decent goalkeeper. And Arsene Wenger went out and bought, and it was the last day we were just signing players, and we bought Andre Santos, who I famously predicted would be a good player. Tells you what I know. It was the early days of YouTube, and I was seduced by clips. I'm afraid, gentlemen. As my friend pointed out, all these clips are him going forward. And he couldn't defend for shit. So we brought in Mertesacker, we brought in Arteta, and I just feel like I don't know if you remember, lads, and I'm going to struggle myself, but we were linked with like every good player in the world. And I'm convinced that had we not got our absolute arses handed to us 8-2 at Old Trafford, Wenger probably wouldn't have bought anyone. And so I literally think, if you don't believe in God, then I don't know who intervened at that point and said, you know what, I just need to install these people at the club because they may come good one day and do something, because no one else was going to do it. And we signed, and I like Per Mertesacker, and Per Mertesacker will be No, he's not going to be better than me at football. I don't care. But I was going to say he'll be a better footballer than I ever will be. But no, he won't. These were massively under, sort of like so like, what am I trying to say here anyway? That's what I'm trying to say is that they weren't that good, but because of where we were like, I'll take him. I'll take Arteta today. Arteta, I think, cost 10 million quid. There's that famous Everton thing that where the Arteta money go, that I remember. He cost 10 million quid. Mertesacker didn't cost more than 10 million quid, I don't think.
I think it was about 8, I think, off the top of my head.
You see what I mean? Like, what the fuck, man? Like, what? Do you know what I mean? What player are you getting for 8 million quid? And this wasn't like 1954, where 8 million pound was a lot of money. No, it wasn't a lot of money then either. And it'd be nice to know who we sold that year. So like, that's what I'm saying, innit? So that, no, I was kind of like, yes, I'm glad we've bought people because we need bodies, but these bodies aren't all that. Arteta, by all means, was a Barclaysman. He was a Premier League player. He'd been around everywhere. But he also played for PSG pre-Qatar money, and he played for Rangers and then Everton. So that's where we were shopping, lads. And that was a bitter pill to swallow at that time. And it was just where we were as a club. But you know what was happening at that point, lads? Those seasons, Robert van Persie was carrying us. That's what was happening. We had a standout player who would carry us, whether it was Fàbregas, whether it was Van Persie, and all these guys got careers on the back of them, on the back of these players, who we then eventually sold at the end of the season. So, yeah, wasn't impressed. Absolutely convinced that had we not got slapped 8-2, 8-2, 8-3, I can't remember now. Don't care. 8-2. Absolutely convinced that we wouldn't have signed anybody.
Here's a mad thought for you. We just talked about 2 signings in that era that we've just spoken about, and we've spoken about how bad it was. Those 2 players, what they became for Arsenal Football Club in recent history, very recent history, did they live through that and use that to fuel where they are now? Look, that's a leap. That is a huge leap. But Arteta as manager, Mertesacker was running the youth department, and those 2 players were playing in that absolute shitstorm of an era. And look at what they, I think Mertesacker deserves a bit more credit for what he did for our youth system. And I think we're seeing the fallout of that as well, which is definitely another episode. But I think we're seeing the fallout of that this summer with him leaving. But then you look at Arteta as well as manager and what he's brought along, and it's just mad. Again, liable moment as we were chatting there. They were playing at the same time in this shit era, and you've got to think to yourself, have they lived through that and used that to see how it's not done? Again, big leap, massive conspiracy, just something that popped into my head.
So, just on that, as a final point on that, if we were good, even half good, do they play for the Arsenal?
Probably not at that time, no.
They don't,
let's be fair, probably not.
Yeah,
probably not.
They don't sign for the Arsenal. They don't.
It's mad.
I think what they were, I think it's more of an American sport thing, but they were culture changers. They came in and I think they made us just, we had a lot of young players around that time who'd have been in that squad, like Wilshere, Chesney came in. Was he that year or the year after? You had players like that.
I think
Ramsey,
he was, yeah.
Gibbs, lots
Walcott.
of young players. Walcott. Chamberlain probably signed around that time as well, I think, didn't he?
Yep.
He would have been in that sort of squad. Yeah, I think they 2 were real culture changers for us and maybe have shaped what's come since. But, it didn't feel like it at the time, did it? But I think when you look back, that was when there was a start of a change, I think.
Did we sign Mertesacker not for his physical ability? Did we sign him because he had 100 caps for Germany, who, let's face it, at the time were an absolute juggernaut of an international team? He played at big clubs in big games. Was it £8 million spent for a personality change, a mentality change, rather than a physical change? For £8 million, I'd do it.
It's a fair argument. It's a fair argument. I think if you feel like you can bring in some experience which will help these lads through, you definitely, just going from Wenger's own words of bringing in young players and they cost you a few points a season. If you've got a team full of young players, they're going to cost you a lot of points, right? It's just
exactly.
addition,
Yeah. So
isn't it?
At what point do the scales tip and you go, right, I've gone too much in that one. I need to now balance it out with a little bit of, experience.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point, but I just think that's where we were. That's where we were shopping at the time.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that as well. I do agree with that. I think we could have the same conversation if we were being successful and be shopping in a different market. It wouldn't have been a Mertesacker. It would have been someone maybe 2-3 times the value.
Yeah.
So I think both those things do join together.
Yeah.
Well, before we go on to our players, I've got one last question for you both. I mean, you can take this from whichever point of view you want, from the fans, the board, everyone. I mean, do you think the club just accepted mediocrity then? Do you think it was just they were happy to just plod along, or do you think there ever was any real ambition to win the league?
I think Fai said it very well. I think we hid behind the new stadium and the fact that we were talking about having no money to spend. I don't think that's 100% true. I think we used it as an excuse to accept where we were. Not accept where we were, but sort of we put ourselves there. That mentality put us where we were, kind of thing. And we hid behind the stadium. We used it as a shield. We did. We all did. Even the fans did. We put it on our back and we're like, oh, well, we can't do this because we've got a new stadium. We've got to pay for it, blah, blah, blah. Like Fai said, absolutely not. There was a balance. There was definitely a balance, but I think we were far too conservative. So, yeah, I think the other thing that I would say as well, my other point, I'd forgot it, but it's just come back now. We were finishing fourth consecutively, and that was a decline for us. You look at those teams that I mentioned before about moving into new stadiums and where they were finishing in their first few seasons, and compare it against fourth place, mate, they'd have ripped you limb for limb for a fourth place finish.
Yes, fair point.
Look at Tottenham. They're fighting relegation. Since they've moved stadium. I'm not saying that's the only reason. I'm not saying it's the stadium's fault at all. But that's where they are. Look at Man City. Moved into a new stadium. They were better, but not finishing fourth. They were miles away from fourth until they got bought out. You look at West Ham, where they are now. Even now, they've struggled with it. They've had the success eventually, but now they're going back again. So, was fourth that bad? When you start looking at it in that kind of context, when you flip it into that side of the dice, I don't know. I don't think it was as bad at the time. It felt bad. You had 20 years to it, and you look at other teams who were doing something similar. Because, like we said earlier on, we were the trendsetters. We went early with this stadium move, and we were still finishing fourth. We were still playing in the Champions League. We were still competing to a certain degree. So yeah, was it really that bad? I don't know. I
feel like you're going to have an answer for that, Fires. Was it that bad?
Yeah, I did try and team up for this.
Look,
that wasn't me with a big wooden spoon at all.
Look, I get it, lads. I get it. I was one of them at the time that bought into a grand idea and thought, we're gonna do this and it's gonna come good one day, and we're gonna buy everybody, and it doesn't matter. Where fourth place was good for what we'd set ourselves. Look, I mean, the way I understand it now is you can own a business that does really well, and people at the bottom of the pyramid just don't see that. So people at the bottom of the pyramid say, "Oh my God, my wages have gone down, everything's gone down, performance has gone down, output is down." But the directors, the people at the top, their balance sheet looks decent. So, and I think that disconnect between the hierarchy of the club and the playing side was evident for everybody. I think Arsenal, and I'm convinced Arsenal were making money at that time. Arsenal made a conscious decision to not invest in the team, but to divest from it and perhaps, invest in other things. Finishing off property, finishing off, paying off debts quickly, whatever, for reasons other than benefited the team. I will until I see something different. I'm not gonna deviate from that. I just don't think that there is enough evidence to suggest that anything apart from being profitable was our aim. And what is the most profitable thing you can do after not investing in your club? Is what's the maximum you can you're not going to win the league if you don't invest in your team. So what's the maximum you can get? We'll qualify for the Champions League. Great. Okay. That's great. That's us. So if you're a director, you thought, brilliant, I've got invested in the club, but we're getting the revenue still good, full house every week. And we're pocketing, net 40, 50 million quid a season from player sales. So if you ask me, if I own that business and I don't give a shit, then yeah, that sounds great. But what happens then, lads? That's very short-termism. What happens later? People don't believe in your club anymore. You've lost your identity. You've become something completely alien to what you were a few years ago before that. You've overinvested in youth. And this whole thing about we played a lot of kids. Well, we had to play them. Play them. And that's where I give Arsene Wenger credit, if I am going to give any, is that when he was given money to spend, he was brilliant. Highbury, brilliant. When he was asked to do that job, he took on something that he knew was self-destructive, right? He could have at any point said, you know what? No. Real Madrid are in for me. Barcelona are in for me. Great. I'm going to go and do one. And maybe we would have suffered even worse under a new manager. It's possible. And so I do give him credit for that. But what I don't, lads, and where I do draw the line with this kind of stuff is that it was very short-termism for Arsenal to then say, we're not going to invest in a team. We're not going to invest in doing well in the Premiership or the Premier League at the time, whatever. But we are going to sell the idea that we are doing this for long-term benefit. That was never the case. The directors, the everyone that's involved with that football club were priming it for a sell. We were up for sale for 10 years. We're just not privy to that knowledge. It's just clear. It's clearly obvious though. We had David Dean was working on his own people to sell it to, and I think it was Peter Hillwood and Lady Nina Bracewell, whatever, was working on their own people to sell to. They were trying to work out their own stuff, and Arsene Wenger was left carrying the baby in the bathwater. But it was imperative for him to explain that this thing that you want to sell will be worth less if you don't invest in the team. It just will. If it gets worse, this is a decline. First, second, third, fourth. That's a decline. And no one has a divine right to win anything. I say that again, but I just don't see why, for example, we would sit there and say our goalkeeper is shit and not buy a goalkeeper. I don't see why we had to go and buy people like Manuel and Almunia. I don't see why we had to go and invest in people, even people like Mertesacker. If you look at Koscielny was talent ID at almost its best. We went and we got a centre back from the second division of France, and he was a good player. He was a good player, and we could have sold him 50 million quid. Huh?
He was a really good player. He was
really good player. Second division France, straight into the Premier League, adapted, no issue. Great player. When talent ID worked for us, it was working well, but then we would take unnecessary risks with the club, unnecessary risks with the team. And for me, whether it's commercial or ideological or, Wenger felt like he could do it. He felt like he could generate a team of winners through these young people playing together. It was that was a long shot, lads, and we felt the brunt of that for the results of that for the next 10 years. 10 years, and I just don't think it was well thought out. And as fans, we were locked out, so we felt left out. So that's for me. That's where this ends in like massive disappointment, not winning anything. Everyone that gave us hope was extinguished immediately, whether we sold them or whether they decided that they weren't going to continue with us in a different way. And the culmination of like 6-0 at Chelsea on like Wenger's 1000th game, 8-2 at Old Trafford. These were embarrassing, mate. These were massively embarrassing. And these were the culmination of the board and the mismanagement of Arsenal Football Club. And we just didn't see it as that, because we were tied into this other dream that one day we were going to be able to spend all this money and one day we were going to be able to be champions again. Tell me, lads, before it's a bit of a more recent question, but before Arteta looked like he could challenge for the league title, were you ever confident we could win a league again?
No. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced I am now, to be honest. We've won one. I'm still not sure.
So that's my point. What did we stake, and what for? Like, none of these things have ever been clear, and even today they're not clear, mate. They're not clear. Like now, right? We've got solid owners. They've bought in. They're actually sports people, regardless. They're billionaires. I know how that goes. They're American. I get it. They're multiple franchise owners. I get it. But these people are there investing in the club. Say what you want about them. They're investing in the team. We do not have a chance in hell of signing someone like Declan Rice. Not a chance in hell. Not a chance in hell that we would get someone like Saliba. And this is when we were shit. We bought Saliba. We weren't good when we bought Saliba. Do you know what I mean? And that kind of investment in the team, that...
Oh
no.
That's what I'm talking about. Saliba with, I think, 20 million quid, right? From Senatia. 20 million when we haven't got money to spend. Have I disappeared? Anyway.
Yeah, cut out there for a second.
Arsenal.com trying to mess me up mid-flow there. Yeah, but anyway, look, the point is that we were throwing money away, is my point. And there was no thinking behind it, which is why you get a mad dash, Christmas Eve dash through the shopping centre going, all right, tell you what, Dad won't mind Drakkar Noir again this season, this Christmas, get him that. Same socks as last year, we'll get him that as well. That's all right. Last day, at least they got something. It's bollocks. It's bollocks, and they fucked it up. And there's no other way to describe it.
Oh. Not the happiest of eras, this one, is it? Let's move on to the final bit of the show, the defining players of that era. I've got a few players I've written down, but I think I'm going to go a different route when it gets to me. But I think some of the ones that stand out for me were Fàbregas, Van Persie. We discussed it before the show. Adebayor, potentially Jack Wilshere. Well, I'll go with your two first, and then I'll throw mine in if you want. Fies. Any of them four? Or is there someone else that defines that era? Because I wonder if defining this era, we should be going for the most successful players, really. But
I don't know, mate. Are you trying to get me to do something positive now, and I'm fuming?
Yeah.
Look, we spoke about Van Persie and Fàbregas being, the great hopes of Highbury that moved into the new stadium. They were phenomenal footballers. There's no doubt about it. I don't know if it's exactly this period, but I think it is actually. I think it is this period. But the one that sums it up for me was Samir Nasri, and I'll tell you why. Samir Nasri was bought for a decent price. Was potentially a good player, very highly rated in France. We got ahead of a few clubs to get him. He had excellent. Had an excellent couple of seasons for us and sold him for a profit. Didn't even get a chance to play him in a big game or whatever, and it just as soon as he became good, off he went to Man City for decent money, and that kind of that for me was the greatest indicator of where the club was. But fun player. Haleb was a great player as well. Arshavin was fun. All these other guys were fun as well. But yeah, Van Persie and Fàbregas are the guys that are most important when it comes to Van Persie and Fàbregas were the ones, mate.
Nath, what about you? Who's your defining player of that era?
Yeah, I think for me it's Fàbregas, because just the era that we spoke about tonight in particular, probably not the whole Emirates era so far. What are we doing? Are we doing just this bit that we spoke about?
Just this bit we spoke about tonight. So what, 2006 to 2013-ish?
Yeah, so it's got to be Fàbregas for me because of what we've mentioned already. He was the post boy. He was the great hope. He came from that Highbury era into the new era and was going to lead that era. But I also think he was the catalyst for all the bad stuff that came afterwards. And I don't blame him for that. I blame the club for that. But I feel like if we're talking about a player that sums up everything that we talked about tonight, from the good at the start to the bad to where we're going to leave it, Fàbregas is the pin for me.
Yeah, I think.
What about you, Dave?
I think for me, I was all set to come into this and say Robin Van Persie because, you know, as great as he was, I think players leaving was also a massive part of this era. And, you know, as we said earlier, he was one that hurt me the most. But I think I've changed my mind, and I'm going to go for a bit of a wild card, and I'm going to say Nicholas Bendtner, because this era was
Lord
just
Bendtner.
Rubbish, and Nicholas Bendtner was there for pretty much that entire period. You know, he left on loan for a season, I think, but he was there for basically this whole era, and this whole era was terrible, wasn't it? And when I think back to terrible parts about this era, Nicholas Bendtner is right up there for me. So, yeah, I'm going for Nicholas Bendtner as my defining player of this early part of the Emirates era because he was rubbish. He was so bad, but yeah, I'll stick with Bendtner. Well, not.
You could have picked anyone.
Yeah, I almost went for Gervinho as well. You know, coming in, was he pretty cheap signing, or about 10 million or something, and also turned out to be absolutely terrible, didn't he? But yeah, I'm gonna stick with Bendtner.
There was nothing good about this period. There was nothing good about this period.
Exactly.
Little performances here and there, but nothing good.
That's why I just didn't want to go for anyone good, because I'm not sure the defining player of that era is someone who's good. It's someone who's an absolute failure, isn't it? And terrible. Can't wait for next week because we need to get to at least some good stuff. But well, let's fast forward then. After we then started in 2004 as Invincibles, and then following that up with an FA Cup win in 2005, Arsenal had gone almost a decade without a trophy. There were 2 League Cup final defeats, and of course that Champions League final defeat in 2006. But there really was very little for Arsenal fans to get excited about in them first years at the Emirates. But in 2014, the team had a chance to end the trophy drought. Facing Hull in the final of the FA Cup, we were massive favourites to win the trophy for a record equaling 11th time. Just 8 minutes in, and Hull had stunned every Arsenal fan watching into silence as they took a 2-goal lead. And this looked like the latest in a 9-year run that had earlier that year seen Jose Mourinho dub Arsene Wenger as a specialist in failure. And that is where we'll pick up next week. Cheers, lads. That was fun, is the word I used to describe that, but
healing.
Something.
Yeah. It was healing.
Therapy.
Yeah.
I just remembered we were champions, lads, so I feel a bit better now.
Yeah.
We're champions again.
It's really hard to think back at this era, isn't it? It's not. It's really not very good at all. There's not a lot of positives from that time.
It's not pleasurable, lads. No, it's not. It's not a fun thing to do, but it's an important part of where we are today, right? It's an important.
Yeah,
part
absolutely. Yeah.
You know, a lot of the guys who support the club now, younger than us, didn't get to see. That's all. Sorry, I beg your pardon. That's all they know about the club. They know the club from those what they call. It became the banter era, didn't it?
It is, yeah. No club wants a banter era.
No, you don't. No, you don't. No. And we just became those guys that just spoke about stuff, and you know, the most annoying fans there were, because everything, but you're tribal, you defend your club, don't you? And even now, even after this conversation, I'm thinking, I've gone a bit too hard on Arsene Wenger. I really like him. The custodians of the clubs have been good to us, and just think, no, but we were shit. I'm not happy about that. Not happy about that. No, mate. There shouldn't have been that many league titles that we gave away, and Champions Leagues and stuff. No, forget that. Forget that.
Oh God. Well,
anyway, let's move on to something positive.
Yeah, the rest of the episode, I think, will be a little bit more positive, right there. There'll be some more fun stuff in those. But if you've enjoyed that, whatever word you want to use, enjoyed might not be the right word, but if you have like listening to us, please subscribe, because we're going to do this for another 4 to 5 weeks leading up to the start of the season, and we've got plenty of good stuff to come. We'll obviously finish off our World Cup episodes next week, then we'll get onto the Arsenal stuff, full on pre-season mode then. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to get all the latest. That is it. So cheers, lads, and we will see you next week.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, boys. Thank you.